in the areas where we working. First of all, the digital evidence is inherently volatile. It exists across various platforms, whether it is devices, cloud servers, messaging apps, telecom. So there's a huge bracket of it. And unlike a physical crime scene, a digital crime scene is already disturbed by the time we go. It is disturbed, it is dynamic, and it can be altered or destroyed remotely. Secondly, encrypted passwords and anti forensic techniques frequently block our. It is also a race against time. Attribution is extremely difficult. The offenders use. Sir, I think I'll need a little more time than the 2 minutes I have. 2 minutes, I don't think I'll be able to finish. I'll try my best.
Okay, just try and rush through your slides.
Sir, okay. So,
Sorry to.
sir. So basically, using anonymization techniques, forensic imaging and hash value verifications, which are essential for evidence integrity, but the procedures are often inconsistent across jurisdictions and agencies, and maintaining the chain of custody in a cyber offense is not an easy task. What makes women cases different, I'll quickly go through, is that first is reporting itself. We know women don't report. Secondly, the primary evidence is actually on the victim's phone, and she is quite hesitant to actually give away her phone to the police for examination and being kept and then submitted into the court. Offenders are often known to victims. The harmful content, as I said, keeps reappearing, and delay in justice definitely has an impact in this matter. Problems in prosecution. Basically, we need to prove access. So it is very easy to establish that which is the account which was used. But how does one prove that who was sitting behind the keyboard at that point of time? And similarly, there are so many other things. Since I've been asked to rush off, I'll probably do. Is the 63 BSA certification, which becomes an issue. The point of when the individual or the platform should be called for evidence is, again, whether it should be at the right point of time or whether it is as per their convenience. The critical gaps in law. We function to operate under the IT Act, it is actually a regulatory act rather than a penal act, which was probably never drafted with keeping in view or imagined that we would be tackling cyber crimes to the volume and the scale which is occurring. So that is where the biggest problem presently exists. There is no specific offense dealing exclusively with AI generated pornography. Section 66A, which was struck down, there is no alternative section to it, and therefore the debate about privacy versus free speech continues. Many things are known, whether it is cross-border mismatch, takedown deadlines which are not adhered to, etc. The practical realities behind the investigation delay. First is the carrier grade NAT. A single public IP address can be shared with thousands of people. Exact source, port, and the precise timestamp, it is very difficult to nail the accused or produce that as an evidence. And another issue is about mule holders, that often they themselves are actually victims. So all these are lot of issues which we face. When we talk about MLAT, while the platform's preservation window is very small, the MLAT procedure take 8 to 18 months. And by that time, the platforms don't have any information, relevant information to give it to us. The role of judiciary, very important judgments, whether it was the Shreya Singhal judgment, which gave us importance about online speech, the Anwar PV judgment, and the third judgment about Arjun Pandit Rao, which reaffirmed that the importance of 60B certification. These judgments have significantly given us some clarity, but what important is that all of us need a victim-centric, protecting the identity of the victim and ensuring there's a sensitive handling of the complaints. When we look at way forward, I already talked about need for a specific legislation, a stronger platform accountability, where their obligations are enforceable and not just merely advisory. We need a periodic review of our cyber laws. Something which was relevant 5 years earlier is not relevant on date the way technology evolves. Unfortunately, our laws are archaic. Early preservation and content removal request is something which we would request for. As prosecutors, as investigators, we realize that our responsibility lies in capacity building, in being in tunes, and if not ahead, at least be in time, in at least where the offender is going. A cross border and interagency cooperation mechanism which moves at least quickly enough than the present existing channels. In conclusion, I would say that the technology will keep evolving. The law and the institutions are also evolving. The remaining variable is the speed. The gap between what a woman experiences online and what the system can do to it is measured in hours for the platform, in weeks for the investigation, and in months for prosecution and judiciary. Closing this gap is the key for justice for women. Thank you.
Thank you, Shika, for highlighting the dangers of AI enabled crime, which is scary in itself, but posing a new challenge to the maintenance of rule of law. And I think it was important to flag the uh, lack of amendments to statutes because we all know that despite certain provisions of the IT Act having been struck down, they still remain in the statute book. And to the extent of, I think the Supreme Court also flagged that the police officers were still relying on those sections. So this again brings you back to the point I made earlier. But an interesting aside, when because we're talking AI here, we had the AI summit in Delhi some time ago, and uh, I think all of India, and in fact all of the world, was scared about this evolving technology and generative AI and what it would do to make the lives of all of us miserable. And the I had a conversation with a techie friend of mine during that time, and I asked him, what does AI, what do you people have to say about this danger? And he said, very soon AI is going to tell a woman that she is wrong, and she has to be calm about it. And that, my friend, will be the end of AI. So I thought it was necessary to flag that in this conference because women, you still wield the power. Uh, that said, let me move on to the next speaker, Ms. Kala Krishnaswamy, again, an IPS officer.
Good morning, everyone. Distinguished Honorable Justice and the Chairman and all other dignitaries here. My topic for today is human trafficking and safety of women in public places, something which has been there for each woman throughout the ages. And I can just talk where we are today in terms of police looking at these two crimes. Human trafficking has been there ever since we exist as women, and our safety in public places has always been a concern and still is a concern. So looking at human trafficking, what we are doing now at the issue, human trafficking comes in various forms like bonded laborers, forced laborers, child beggary, but most importantly today we are talking about human trafficking for sexual exploitation, commercial exploitation of women and children. And as we understand, it has been there, the problem has been there with us for ages, and it has largely affected women and children disproportionately. Today, with technology, I think technology has become an other vulnerability where it's easy to lure women and also children into this trap of sexual exploitation. So even though we have come a long way in understanding human trafficking, technology has only worsened the problem. So there is a lot of legislative framework to look at every aspect of human trafficking. Most importantly, trafficking for commercial sexual exploitation. So as police officers, and with a lot of interference, directions of the Honorable Supreme Court, today we are better placed in understanding human trafficking and also in investigating human trafficking. This has for long been a very, very neglected area, but not so now. As police officers, we have been now trained, and a lot of capacity building has happened to understand what human trafficking is and look at the problem in a victim-centric approach. We understand that, and also the recent judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court. So for the legal framework, the role of the police in human trafficking, prevention starts from understanding what it is, the prevention part of it, the rescue part of it, and handing over for an investigation part of it, and also for a comfortable rehabilitation part of it. So today we not only, traditionally, immoral trafficking, we have always been capturing in the ITPA Act, but now with the new criminal laws and the insistence that we also use the new criminal laws, it's not all, we also use, we are able to give a stronger legal framework. We are able to use the strength of the legal framework by not only using the Immoral Trafficking Act, but also using the new criminal laws, the sections 143, 144, and also looking at organized crime as, looking at immoral trafficking as organized crime. Because it is not, trafficking has only evolved. It's not as localized it has to be. Now every state, a transit state, a receiving state, it always combines it to all three. Every state, it's a receipt state, it's a transit state, it's a store state. So, and we also see lot of this trafficking happens on the international scales also. Like in Bangalore, when we have done recent cases, it's not only that in all other states, it's not only that women come in from different states, but it also from neighboring countries, and the number of countries is only increasing now. So it's becoming a more and more, in every state, it's becoming a more and more organized form of trafficking. And we now understand the importance of investigation using organized crime so that we are be able to look at the whole trail of the system, also the financial aspects of it. When it is an organized crime, there are a lot of people making money out of it, luring a lot more women, luring children, girl children. So trafficking as organized financial crime, just not limited to a single incident, a single woman. And the emphasis is, of course, to look at women, to look at children as victims, and with more dignity, with more rights to be given to them. This is something which police officers are now trained to look at, as women themselves are, they are part of the whole justice system. It's the victim-driven justice that we can endeavor to give. That is something over a period of time, with the intervention of the law, with the intervention of the enforcement, we are now better able to understand where we are in immoral trafficking. So a related concept to immoral trafficking is, of course, missing children, and in that, missing girls, which has been a lot of attention, a lot of direction has been given by the Honorable Supreme Court. And now, every year, we still see thousands of missing girls are still untraced. If it is thousands, we really don't know where they're going. I mean, it is very disheartening, and it is very scary also to not trace these girls, because it is very, very difficult to understand the consequences of what has happening to these little girls or young women. So today, based on all the directions, we are now looking at missing girls, missing children cases in a more professional perspective. So we have all missing girls, all missing children cases. Obviously, they are registered as a kidnapping case. But most importantly, it is an investigation which happens in the golden hour. That if it is 2 days, 3 days, we really don't know what happens to children. So the concept of golden hour, where we are able to investigate and get the maximum, everything, all the evidence, whether it's a CCTV evidence, whether it's a social media evidence, whether it's your Facebook, whether investigation at home, school, wherever we are. So bringing this kind of urgency to the matter, I think that is very important in case of missing girls and also missing boys. That a lot of orientation has happened, but I think still a lot more orientation is required, because it is different in different places. In a Bangalore city or in rural areas, the kind of understanding of the emergency of missing girls is different, and we still have to go a long way in this. So in the area of missing children, I think the Mission Vatsalya, which is a WCD-enabled project, is very, very important, because today we live in a place where it's a data-driven investigation. If we are able to put all the data, police, the WCD, and all other data, so we are able to look at where the missing children are going. So the more data that we are, more accurate data, then it's easier to see what is happening to missing children. Because children are missing from Kashmir, they may be found here. Some children may be missing in other states, they may be found here. So the data, today we work on data. I think this data matching from all agencies, whether it is public, whether it is a WCD, whether it's NGOs, and definitely police, putting the data together, I think, is very, very important in missing children cases. Because what happens to these missing children? We always have to look at, is there a trafficking angle to it? Because if thousands of missing childs mostly and missing boys are still not traced, we don't know what is happening to them. So every state has to look at what is happening to their missing children, whether they are here or whether they are elsewhere. So to combat this aspect of immoral trafficking and also missing children, every state has its own institutional mechanism. So as in Karnataka also, as in every other state, we have an anti-human trafficking unit. In Karnataka, they function in the women police stations. They are specially trained. The inspector and the staff are trained, and they work with other agencies to deal with the problem of human trafficking. Whenever the missing case, there is some human missing case, there is a trafficking angle to it, AHTU takes over the case, and there is a specialized unit in CID of Karnataka. And another unit is the SJPU, is the Juvenile Police Unit. There is a Juvenile Police Unit in every station and also at a ACP, DSP level, so that we are able to, the police have a sensitivity to understand that they have to deal with children either in conflict with law or who need care and protection, have to be handled differently, so that you're able to not only get evidence from them, but they are eventually placed in better places in terms of rehabilitation. So today, to solve these problems, I think technology is the most important thing. We work on crime database today, whether we have the police IT, CCTNS, or the various portals that work for both for human trafficking and for missing children. Using these databases, a lot of missing children cases today we have been able to track in Bangalore and also in other places using the NAT grid, where we have access to a lot more databases than we had till now. So we have to be in that we are genuinely feeding our data and also using that data so that we are able to get better results. And the more and more trafficking gets online, today it's not only that socially, economically vulnerable women, they were easy to get into traffic. Today, emotional vulnerability is another angle where you can traffic. It's so easy to make a call on the online, and anybody vulnerable, it's easy to lure them. And in the camouflage of legitimate businesses, they can be trafficked into immoral trafficking, sexual exploitation areas. So that is one thing where technology has made things worse. And because we think it's a organized crime, financial transaction analysis and social media monitoring is one more thing that we need to be conscious of. What's happening in social media? What are in the garb of giving employment, in the garb of a better life, there can be instances, or there are instances of trafficking of women and children. So now more than ever, interstate and interagency coordination with the states, with the railways, with the airports and CBI, NIA, whenever we see there is international trafficking rackets, the role of CBI, NIA, and also the FRRO becomes very important. These days, it's mostly like that. We see cases of trafficking either from different states or from different countries, and the law enforcement agencies have to immediately do these things so that there are effective results in both human trafficking and child missing. I would say now, with a lot of importance given to child missing, technology has really helped otherwise. So it looks nice that there is so much, but on the field, the experience is something else altogether. Even talking to the girl or the victim, if I could call her, is very, very difficult. It's difficult to talk to them, to reach out to them. There is cultural barriers. There is emotional challenges. They would not want to talk to the police officers. They would not want to confide. And these things, I think a lot can be changed with the way police officers can approach the problem. How you treat a woman, how you treat a child can change the way you can take the case across. So apart from this, definitely there is a lot of resource constraints. We cannot look into every case, every aspect, and there is also coordination between different agencies do not happen so easily. It depends on the realities and also how much. In spite of these challenges, I think today we are better placed in understanding what human trafficking is, the problem of a missing child is, and there is a lot more resources to deal with it. So that way, we are better placed in handling this problem. So this is something, offenses against women in public place is something else. So I think public place is everything, right? you get out of this building, even any one of us, we still don't want to walk home alone. So I think the problem has still remained the same. In spite of years of policing, a lot needs to be done. So public places, whether it is roads, transports, schools, colleges, malls, theaters, the problem of sex-based harassment, sexual assault still prevails. So whether it is the most worst forms of rape or sexual assault or other forms of harassment like sexual harassment, stalking, and assault, still there is a lot more that has to be done in public places to make each one of us feel safe in public spaces. So what has been happening in safety of women in public spaces? One of the ways, the way a woman can feel safe is how the police station makes them feel when they walk into it, the way the investigation happens. So today we have women police stations, we have women help desk, and in the investigation also, we insist that please to follow the mandatory process of investigation, which are available for women. Offenses against women, there are mandatory protocols to be followed. The more we follow it, the more women feel safe to walk into the police station and give a complaint, and more the chances of conviction of the offenses if these are followed. So one of the ways in which we are able to make women to come and talk to a police officer is to make the police stations more women friendly. And today, how do you actually make women feel safe in public places? Post Nirbhaya, I think that one incident, whatever it was, it changed a lot in the way we understood things. So today we have the concept of smart cities. Bangalore is one of the smart city where there is technology-based safety measures for women. We have an integrated command and control center, and every woman should know safety is actually a click away. So you can call on 112, or you can message on 112, or you can make a video on 112, and it actually reaches the command and control center, and there is a real-time facility, and apart from that, a GPS-enabled mobile facility where we have the hoysalas, the pink hoysalas, which reach women at 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but women should be aware of all this. And there is also a SOS available in the Karnataka State Police app and in the command center system itself, where women can reach out. So apart from this, we have CCTV coverages, I think is very, very most important. It's like a billion eyes. The more cameras, the more eyes. So the concept of smart city, yes, it's doing very good in Bangalore city, but the point is it should be expanded to everywhere, whether it's rural areas or in rural areas also, we have this 112 emergency call. So at any emergency, you can call and the mobile van will be available. And there is also the SOS facility, which women can, on their phone, access it. But the whole idea is, I think, a lot more needs to be done in the speed and in access and in the way women understand this technology. And in the station itself, we have, as already mentioned, the all-women police stations and the women help desk, so that women are able to go to the stations and give a complaint. And there are women task force also to understand the problems of women. But as I understand, if I would just want to end it by saying, still today, I don't think women feel safe. It's not I don't think, they are not safe. None of us would like to walk alone in the night. None of us would like to go to isolated places. None of us would like to travel without having all the right ticks that we are taken care of. So there is something we want safety in every place, whether on the road, whether in the bus, whether in the train, whether in a hotel, whether in a school, whether in a workplace. I think a lot needs to be done. One, technology. 2, CCTV cameras. 3, I think anonymity in the cities is not good. So a lot of verifications, especially for children in school buses, even in public transport, making it more safe with use of cameras, with use of panic buttons, and more places where you can have panic buttons in isolated areas to have panic buttons. A well-lit system, panic buttons, I think, is very, very important. And finally, I'd say the community is very important. We do have a very bystander, what do I say? Yes, approach to things, even in the women, and also it's sexual assault is not the problem of the victim. It is something which is the society. So society should understand what it is. If it's not some woman who's facing it, it's all of us facing it. So if the community feels strong, if the community owns it up, and if there is technology and attitude change, I think we can go longer than where we are today. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Kala, for sharing your thoughts on the leverage of technology for effective crime stopping, and also for the thoughts on coordination of different agencies for effective law enforcement. I think that last part of it was to be noted, because unless is precisely this, you have a complete lack of coordination between the various agencies, and we've noticed that in the Kerala Judicial Academy we're actually doing joint workshops with all the different agencies like the prosecution, the forensic people, etc. I think that it's worked wonders in Kerala. Moving quickly to Advocate Geeta Ramaseshan, our next speaker.
I can put my book on this. Honorable Justice Nagaratna for having invited me to participate in this conference. Chairperson NCW, distinguished judges, my co-panelists and the co-judges. I just wanted to start off by paraphrasing Barbara Jordan, a very strong African-American activist, lawyer, human rights person, etc., by putting this not just for domestic violence law, but maybe for almost all our laws, that the true measure of a law is not the number of rights it declares, but the speed and effectiveness with which the rights can be corrected into safety. And so, therefore, the law is undoubtedly very transformative. I mean, the DV Act is undoubtedly very transformative. It recognizes violence within the home. It also defined and enhanced the nature of violence into various categories, which actually also enhanced our understanding of cruelty as a matrimonial wrong in various other matrimonial proceedings. Be that as it may not. The other interesting aspect of this law is that it does not require the woman to seek criminal action against the perpetrator, when in fact that is not what she may want. She may want compensation, custody, right of residence, and all the other remedies that we all know that is available under the DV Act. So the question then for our discussion is that has the institutional system been equally successful in converting the statutory promise into effective protection? The answer to me, in my mind, is mixed. The Act, as we know, is not looks not just at a court, but also as the whole umbrella of support systems, the PO, the service provider, the shelter home, the medical facilities, the police, and of course the legal services authority. And
to begin this, I just wanted to start by asking the 4 questions that the Honorable Supreme Court posed in the We the Women of India versus Union of India, which your lordship is now actually monitoring the role of the states in the Union of India. So the first question, not many of us actually kind of keep reading, the questions that have been posed, and that is why I wanted to put these questions for us to actually look into the roles that are being played in our various states. The first question that has been asked is how many cases are assigned to each protection officer? How many courts must each protection officer attend? What is the existing strength in each district and is it adequate? What guidelines should determine the required strength of the protection officers? And your lordship's court has also sought an empirical study in this regard and has also directed to place before it the state of implementation of Mission Shakti, the integrated women empowerment program, and is now completely monitoring this in every aspect. I could get the statistics of 2022 from a news report. And that was that in 2022, there were 3 lakh complaints, of which there were 3,637 protection officers in the country, 807 shelter homes, and 700 non-stop centers. This is a ground reality under which we operate. Now, I am not exactly going to discuss the structural, going to even talk about the structural problems of the case to be over within 60 days, because that is a problem that we know exists in every aspect of the system, and it is very complex in various ways. But I just thought I would put some points before this august body to see how all this goes. Now, let us look at the first contact. For the woman, invariably, though the act has envisaged various persons to whom she can go, for most women, it is invariably either the police or the lawyer. Now, generally, the larger number of women, in my experience, they approach the police system first to seek some immediate recourse against violence. Or they may approach the hospital if there is a lot of physical violence for treatment, in which case the hospital refers the matter to the police, even though the woman may not say that it is a physical assault. Now, here then is the issue that I pose. Now, who should activate the entire process when there are different um, actors in the play to do so? Can we then look at a single entry system? So, say for example, if a woman comes before the police. I mean, in Tamil Nadu, we have it. We call it as a CSR, and where they conduct an inquiry, and where, of course, after the judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, FIRs are not registered unless there is a counseling, etc. Now, here, can there not be the assistance given to the woman to actually file the complaint in the context of a domestic violence? Because the report that has to go is a very full-fledged form. It has to contain a huge number of details which most people are not in a position to fill. And at that point of time, can there be another assistance being given there for her to completely at least take this process forward? And more than that, where in other agencies, where for example in the police stations itself, posters etc can be put explaining to her that she can file a domestic violence complaint or look at or addressing the issue of domestic violence, so that there is some amount of awareness that can be created. The second point, protection officer. Protection officer cover large areas. And in the city of Chennai, we have, I think, 5 now, which is a huge area for them to cover. They have substantial caseloads and sometimes they hold additional responsibilities. They are not always trained in this aspect of understanding violence against women. They also actually would need training on the concerns of gender, etc., to address and look at a complaint given by her in a different way. But be that as it may, they end up having a tremendous burnout. And it is for this example, and it is for this that I feel that I suggest that the DIR report can be written in the station itself, if possible, if there is a great emergency, only in the case of grave emergency. Now, the DIR report becomes a practical and procedural hurdle because she has to complete several steps, lots of details to be filled, especially in the case of economic abuse. So, clear direction, one way of looking at it would be that a clear suggestion that interim directions of protection need not wait the completion of the entire DIR formalities, and that can be assessed later at a different stage. So, say, for example, if she's complaining economic abuse, etc., and has to be given with reference to the details, maybe if interim directions could be obtained just to stop or freeze the bank account, which we actually obtain in family courts in a much more easier way, is something that could be considered. The other point is the 24 hours problem. Now, if urgent orders are required, in a court, the filing, the numbering, etc., does have some amount of delay. Now, here what happens is that the greatest danger for her would be immediately after a proceeding is filed, notice is sent, and she lives in the same house or she goes back to the same space, there can be greater threat and violence or a complete expulsion from the household. And so, how does then, can we look at creating an emergency protocol for urgent applications in physical danger cases? I want to also I want to just point out some practical difficulties that we find. Ex parte orders are not always given under Section 23. Now, suggestion could be in such scenarios an urgent filing listing window and standard emergency applications which can contain a concise risk assessment from the protection officer be given, so that the court has the advantage of actually looking at that for passing an ex parte order. Residence orders are again very difficult, as most often than not in urgent cases separate immediate residence will not be possible if the notice goes to the respondent and if before an ex parte order is passed. The scenario still remains that the respondent may uh, threaten her further, not prevent her entry even if she goes with the police, or lock the house and go away, and then it becomes a different dispute. More often than not, then most people think of it as a property dispute. There is a misconception with many people, both women and men included, that the right of residence means that there is a right in the property of that person, which is definitely not the case. So here, if a safety net can be done for her before final adjudication of the matter, so that she is offered protection within the house, and then after that the larger dispute can be resolved. Now, courts order the monetary payment, but the non-payment of the amount leads to another cycle of applications and enforcements. Is it possible to have, I mean, we saw, I mean, when I was looking at the various um, proposals that you had, links that you had stated about from various different agencies about how you contact each of them. So is it possible to have a compliance tracking for monetary orders with which will automatically flag a default and prompt enforcement procedures? Maybe not now, maybe after, when our system is, very adequately structured to have a good online system. But be that as it may, this is something I thought we can consider, because once the order is passed, she still has no remedy. It doesn't, like as it would have been said, that the litigation actually begins when the execution proceedings start, and the same thing happens even in this scenario too. There are again difficult multiple proceedings under various different laws, HMA, Hindu Marriage Act, Guardian and Wards Act, 125 CRPC, and so on and so forth. But DV as a legislation has brought this all under one umbrella, and in my experience also practicing in Muslim law, I find that this is one legislation that actually gives a much greater right to a Muslim woman to seek all these remedies which she would have found very difficult to face in other order. So then, just 2 points I have, so I will be sticking to my 2 minutes more. Litigation, two kinds of cases come. One where urgent orders are needed, and others where cases are filed, much after matrimonial proceedings are on, where you may not need an urgent order, where there is a no risk escalation issue. So every high risk application should include a short safety assessment and follow-up plan coordinated through the PO, police, or wherever or whatever that is appropriate. Last but not the least, I just want to make this true too. One, the long-term matrimonial dispute can have an ordinary adjudication. Immediate risk can have an immediate protection intervention. Disputed allegations, which requires evidence and determination, can be done at the interim or at the final stage, which is what the courts anyway do. In conclusion, I want to start with your quote of a golden hour protocol in this arena. And that would be that it should be a one entry point for the woman, and the burden of coordination should not be left on her. It should be open to it is the responsibility of the state and not that of the victim survivor. And I just shared with you some of the experiences that we see in Tamil Nadu. I'm sure there may be better practices in other states, and there are different kinds of practices in other states. So one issue that the NCW can actually look into is call for the different kinds of practices in these areas which don't require any legislative change, and work around that and see whether a national protocol can be built accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaseshan. And now can we have Justice Anita for concluding remarks?
Don't slip, no?
No, it will not slip.
Thank you. Good morning to the dignitaries on and off the days, ladies and gentlemen. I am the last speaker as far as the working sessions go. So I'll start with a reminder that truth always comes last. We've had some excellent and comprehensive presentations that have been made. And there were some points that I just wanted to highlight so that we carry them back with us, and also to give you any inputs that I had on those aspects that have been flagged. First of all, thank you to the speakers for very interesting and insightful presentations.
On the presentation on digital spaces, the speaker said one thing that caught my attention. She said, the online space never forgets. And that's something that we'll have to bear in mind. It's perhaps we are educated enough, literate enough, and I don't mean it in a literal sense, but we know enough of the dangers not to be posting personal data online. But it is necessary to sensitize persons around us not to do that. And I would flag the conflict between, in this context, data availability and data security, particularly ways, means, and measures of accessing the dark web. The speaker highlighted the methods by which there is so much of awareness today about how to commit a crime. So we need to be cognizant about this and educate those around us, not just in our family, but in our immediate circles, to put online, because once it's there for eternity. There is an urgent need for a comprehensive and dynamic enactment to address cybercrimes of all sorts. So, in its absence today, what is it that we can do? In fact, the chairperson and myself had occasion to participate in a conference in the context of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. And this was a couple of years ago, but when it was cutting edge. And one of the teams that had made their presentations there, since it was in the context of digital money, they started with the line quoting the singer Madonna by saying "material girl." So we retorted by saying that our approach would be to go by what the English band The Police said: every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. I think the manner by which we can address this is to have a close watch, because technology is moving much, much faster, at a pace much faster than the other systems can keep up, including our own ability to understand it and to educate ourselves about it. So we will have to watch very closely and ensure that we are up to speed as far as technology goes. And this took me to what the speaker on domestic violence said in the context of senior citizens, women senior citizens who are a very, very vulnerable group and who need special care and attention. Look at bank fraud and phone hacking. There are so many instances that are taking place in regard to how you get a code on the phone and unconsciously, perhaps not us, but the elders in the family tend to click something, and then the bank account is emptied. So we don't have an expert on economic crimes or an expert from the cyber crimes unit who can deal with this here. But what I know from experience, not my own experience fortunately, but somebody else's, is that when there is an incident like this that happens, it is necessary to report it immediately, to bring it to the attention of the authorities immediately, because while the debit in our bank accounts is immediate, the credit in the perpetrator's account normally takes 48 hours, a minimum of 48 hours or more. So if you report it immediately, the bank, which is used as a medium through which the hacking or the transfer has been done, will be able to hold the funds, and they will be able to recredit it to your account. In fact, the bank has a mandate to hold it as a liability to return it to your account if it is reported immediately, if it is done within 7 days. So if you are able to report it immediately, then they can take action to recredit it to your bank account. And therefore, what is important here is to create awareness, particularly among the vulnerable senior citizens, that you report it. If you are not able to do it, tell somebody in the family, tell a neighbor, tell a well-wisher, so that they are able to report it to the concerned unit. And my suggestion to the organizers is that if you could include a speaker as far as economic crimes, bank frauds are concerned, in the upcoming conferences in the other zones, that may be a valuable addition. Now, on the presentation in public spaces, one point specifically resonated. The speaker referred to the golden hour as far as investigations go. I was not aware of there is something called a golden hour in investigations, because we always refer to it in the context of cardiac failure and strokes. So thank you for that. That was very useful to know that timeliness is very important. She also referred to the NAD grid, which we find is very, very useful in tracking youngsters. Now, one point I wanted to make here. All of us are aware of these Romeo and Juliet cases. I know that's not the topic of this session, and I don't intend to expand on that. But the point is this. Sitting on a HCP determination, we have at least one case every day where there is a child missing. The child is on the cusp of majority, and she may have eloped, because the array of respondents will include one gentleman as well, who the parents believe she has eloped. But in Tamil Nadu, what happens is we have a very unique concept called man missing and woman missing. I found that no other state in the country has this concept of man missing or woman missing. They register it as kidnapping or abduction. But we have what is called man missing, woman missing. And that paves the way for a HCP to be filed. The panicky parents come. Once a HCP is instituted, then it is illegal detention unless proven otherwise. So even if there is a gentleman arraigned, even if the complaint mentions that she has eloped, we will have to take it as a case of illegal detention till there is evidence to show that she has voluntarily gone or the child is found. Now, why am I saying all this? When such a case comes up and the child is, say, 16, 17, and we apprehend that there may be danger, which is always there in the complaint and in the HCP, we ask for a special investigation team to be formed. It is headed by a senior police officer. There are 3 to 5 officers there. And once the court gets involved, there is pressure on the police to deliver. So they put all their resources on the table. And we heard the speaker who said there are 40,000 cases as of now of children missing. So just look at the resources that are being diverted to cases which are not abduction, which are not kidnapping, where the child has gone voluntarily. How do you make sure that these resources are available for legitimate cases of a man missing or a woman missing? It's a very difficult question to grapple with. We had a case where, in one case, they put all their resources to play. They found the child. The child comes to the days, and when we ask her, she was just 2 months shy of attaining majority. And when we're interacting with her, she tells me she's a software engineering student. And therefore, these children are always one step ahead of the police. That's another point. Technologically, they are so savvy. They are able to defeat the police systems. They are able to use technology. The first thing they do is they take away their SIM card. They buy a Redmi phone. See, we also become wise with our experience. They buy a Redmi phone. They don't use their Aadhaar card. They don't use banking channels. If it is a case of genuine love, we have had an instance where the people used to do daily labor, earn cash, and live off that till such time the child attains majority. So the child comes to me and says, Akka, she calls me Akka. She says, Akka, I'm going to be 18 in 2 months. We are in love with each other. So you put me in an NGO run by the state. She is giving me a suggestion. Put me in an NGO run by the state. The state will bear the cost. Once I attain majority, then, I don't have to go back home. So what do? She has called me Akka. I wish I could take it seriously and shake her up. But we could not do that. So the question here is, I'm only going to leave the thought with you, because this is an audience which will be able to arrive at solutions to deal with these issues. But we have to grapple with it. And the point which is relevant to this session is, look at the diversion of resources. Technological resources, human resources, monetary resources, all resources that could be used to actually find the children who have been abducted, who have been trafficked. So that was my thought when I heard the learned speaker on this. Now, there is one thing common to these three kinds of dangers. One is, and that point is, the high threshold of tolerance that women have for discomfort. Statistics show that women wait a little too long before they take measures for redressal. That has to change. At the very first instance, when there is an inkling of danger or discomfort, women will have to be sensitized that they have to take stock of the situation, realize that there is a threat or a danger, and do what is required to convey to the authorities that the violence, anticipated violence or the discomfort will not be tolerated and must be addressed. Now, that's far easier said than done. Psychologists attribute this to certain patterns in behavior. One is what is called a deep freeze. It appears that when confronted with a threat, the woman goes into a zone. And one way of going into the zone is, and insulating yourself, is to just obviate what has happened or the threat perception that you have around you. The second, alternatively, is cognitive dissonance, where one starts to blame oneself and say, am I somehow to blame for what is happening to me? Whatever it is, these are issues that will have to be addressed. Just as Jayashankar said, patriarchy is very hardwired into our system, and it's a very unconscious thing. That is something that has, I will end with this point, this is something that has a repercussion on all three spaces: dangers in public, private, and digital spaces. As a society, we have a tendency to glorify the status of a woman. We look at the status of woman over the years and we say, oh, we call her Shakti, we put her up on a pedestal, etc. And that putting her on a pedestal makes it very difficult for her to integrate with mainstream society. I feel that the compulsion to deify her as Shakti is at the cost of humanizing the individual. Calling her a goddess is no good if one doesn't treat her as a human being. Classical notions of femininity that were dealt with by the chairman in the course of his preliminary remarks, they dealt with inequalities and inequities in one section of society. That's how the concept of feminism started, where women were identified as being disadvantaged in many ways. And over the centuries, we have also found several other disadvantaged sections, and there are interplays between these sections as well. Women, those who are differently abled, etc., etc. That is intersectionality for us. So in resolving this, there is really no one size fits all. So in this room of judges, my takeaway is that we must strike a balance to see that substantive justice is done having regard to what that individual lacks. That's important. We cannot paint the entire group with a single brush, but we have to determine what is it that that section or that individual does not have and provide for that. That is something that is very visceral, ladies and gentlemen, and it has to be brought about internally. We will have to inculcate it in our children, and I don't mean just biological children, those around us who are within our spheres of influence, and we have to lead by example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. That brings us to a close. Yes, ma'am. I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Conflict between the Senior Citizens Act and the right of a daughter-in-law in a shared household. The in-laws, the mother-in-law says this property belongs to me, or the father-in-law says this property belongs to me. I don't want her. I want peace in my own house. And the daughter-in-law says I have a right to remain there in the shared household. The husband often initiates all this through his parents so as to get rid of his wife. Now, these cases are a little difficult. What is your take on it? Thank you.
Lordship has been looking at those cases in one of the. No, I find it very conflicting also. There are instances where the husband incites his wife to file a case against his parents for the property of the house, especially when they are elderly. I I mean both these situations are now happening probably in a big way, I would say. So if your lordship is asking me my take, I'm confused.
Ma'am, if I
On
could
the
just,
question of law,
I think the question was posed to a wrong person, because if it was me, I would have said, what would appeal to your lordship?
Because, see, this is one aspect where the husband perspective that the husband is supporting the wife to file this, but the husband will support the parents also to get rid of the wife. Then what do we do? She says,
yes,
I have a right of residence, and the mother in law is saying, I don't want her. And the husband has to provide another household,
the
which he
alternate
can't provide, he says.
accommodation, then maybe the in-laws also can, because under the domestic violence the family is included as a party. Maybe all will have to necessarily explore the possibility of providing her with an alternate accommodation. Fortunately, that is actually a that it recognized alternate accommodation, because the other instances are also coming, ma'am, in different ways, where the elderlies are being harassed. So the only issue will be alternate accommodation or sufficient maintenance for her so that she can manage to find an alternate accommodation.
Thank you. Thank you.
If time
And
permits,
she is not employed.
sorry, Justice Sumant, you mentioned about economic offences cases where the banks are under an obligation to repay if it is informed within 7 days. But I would like Shikha to clarify, because I don't think that is happening, and the banks actually are not able to stop the money going into multiple mule accounts. So how do they actually enforce this?
Uh, thank you, sir. I'd like to just clarify, because ma'am said I also had the Cyber Security Bureau in Telangana, and I also headed CID a little while back, so have a little bit knowledge about this. Sir, there is presently banks are not returning anything in that mandatory 7 period. So what is happening in case of cyber crimes is that when a complaint is raised on the cybercrime portal or 1930, we immediately put a lien. Actually, the need is to put a lien on the amount which is getting lost. Although some banks freeze the account, which is not what is actually to be done. And then, sir, there is the process of refund. So, sir, as we are aware, in Telangana, we are doing that huge amount of refund through the Lok Adalat mechanism, which was developed in collaboration with the judiciary. And in the last 2 years, sir, we've returned back 455 crores to the victims of cybercrime in Telangana. So there is not a 7 day period exactly, sir. And now the MHA has also come up with a portal. Sir,
24 hours is there now. The banks are now mandatorily not required to transfer the till up to 24 hours. SBI has given the customers all this information. SBI is now making it 24 hours only the transfer actually takes place. So 24 hours, if there is a complaint lodged, bank is bound to hold it and then immediately return to the.
sir, what is, sir, what is, sir, what, so what is happening is, sir, that when the raise is complaint is, if the complaint is raised, sir, then it is automatically and immediately blocked. there's not any time. So in fact, since everybody was talking about the golden hour, we are now talking about the golden hour in cybercrime reporting also. And as soon as the complaint comes, sir, immediately it is blocked. The other part which is there, that not allowing transfer of money for some time and from your own account. For example, I am a victim and my money not to be allowed to move out. In that, sir, there is a one is that unless and until it's a very suspicious transaction from a same account, multiple amount or large amount is being done, then the bank is trying to alert the customers and telling them that you might be a victim. But otherwise, blocking is, sir, immediately as soon as it is reported, sir. And so, ma'am wants me to explain the mule account concept I'm sure most of the people would know. But what we see is, sir, that the money in a single cybercrime offense moves through hundreds of mule accounts. And we have been raising this issue with the banking authorities to have algorithms to identify mule accounts, because this is the major problem. And as one of my colleagues mentioned about I think the telecom service providers in a way. So the two main stakeholders through which cybercrime happen is one, the banking system, and second, the telecom providers. The second issue which we're raising, and I would like to bring to the notice of this August gathering, and which somehow we've not been so successful, is the role of the telecom service providers, not only from the part of taking takedown requests or anything, sir, from a simple thing is that as per law, no individual can have more than 9 SIM cards. But we are presently in a situation where different providers are not on a same platform. So I can have 9 SIM cards from Airtel, and I can have 9 from Vodafone, and 9 from BSNL. And we've been insisting on a common KYC and a common Aadhaar based issue so that that does not happen, sir. So these are the issues which we are been handling in this.
This question is both for Shikha as well as the other lady speaker. Is that since we work together, that's why. When you mentioned that most of these cyber crimes happen from scam compounds, which are based out of the Golden Triangle, whether it's Myanmar, Cambodia, the Mekong region. How difficult is it, or is it at all possible to trace, the route the money has taken? And and you also said that it travels through multiple mule accounts, and these scam compounds are essentially located in Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand, that places. So how difficult, or is it actually impossible to trace the money? Suppose it's an elderly lady in Hyderabad or in Bangalore, and she has been under digital arrest and the money has gone, and it travels through all these accounts somewhere to the Golden Triangle. How is it impossible, or are you doing it now?
Very difficult, ma'am. What happens in the banking system is something when the money trace till that, but that also becomes a huge puzzle, because from a first layer to a second to a third to a fourth, it's a progressive increase from tens to hundreds to thousands. The problem happens is that this money at different stages gets withdrawn as USD and crypto, and then gets routed to accounts abroad. We've been successful in at least 3 or 4 cases. In one case in which we were able to track the crypto to a Chinese account in sitting in Jakarta, and we've been able to get a refund back into the victim's account. 3 more cases are presently also where we've been able to identify through the crypto channel, and the process of refund is underway. Here again, ma'am, the problem is that cryptocurrency till date remains outside the regulatory framework. And therefore, although still the banking systems are still on board, at least to track, the crypto wallets and those agencies have no control, and most of them sit abroad. Many of them do not even, don't even have a way to contact them. Many of them do not even respond to our request of giving us details. So, this is again an area which definitely needs stricter regulation.
I just wanted to clarify that when there is a bank fraud, there are two things. One is the victim being reimbursed back for the amount that has been lost. And second, the bank recovering it. So, what is important is if the complaint is made instantaneously, then the chances of the victim being compensated are larger. And I think there is now, I heard it being said that it was 24 hours, but the period was longer earlier because I have had experience of the amount being reimbursed within 3 days and even longer. Perhaps now it is 24 hours. But once the complaint is made within that period, then there is a guarantee that the amount will be refunded back. But for the bank to recover it may take much longer or may be impossible. Not to credit.
No, but so there
If
has
it
to,
has,
huh.
if it,
No, so the complaint.
I think it largely depends on whether you've made a complaint or not.
No, the complaint
if
also.
the complaint
yeah.
is instant,
Huh.
then it can be frozen. So that is the importance of the
If the
timeliness of the
No,
complaint.
so there
Complaint has
has
to
to
be
be.
If
made
it is
immediately.
instant.
So there has to be a golden hour for the complaint also. The golden hour for the bank to freeze, but the golden hour to for the complaint also for the bank to act.
So that's what, ma'am, that's what we've been projecting at to the victims is calling the golden hour of reporting. That's the giving. And now because they are on the 1930 platform, so automatically blocking and parking again takes place. All the banks are now on that platform.
And when it comes to the elderly population, this golden hour reporting does not happen because of their challenges with technology.
And many of them would not know they were doing that. There was one question I wanted to ask. You were talking.
You don't need the mic.
I don't need it, but then the others have to hear me. You were talking about this reporting the minute the mobile numbers that are provided to report about a woman missing, or many a time we are informed that the lines don't work. It's always engaged. This is one complaint that comes.
No,
So-
we have the emergency number that is 112, and it is there's no complaints as we understand. There may be hitches, but the system is working really well because it's an entire setup of command center, even in the city and in the rural areas where there's multiple lines for 112, and it's integrated. So we cannot say it won't be available.
We checked it up just
Oh, okay.
just during the session. My sister was asking what is that emergency. It didn't work.
I think there's no connectivity. I was trying to look at my phone. But otherwise, it works. It works
I think we better stop now. So, thank you to the panelists and my co-chair. It's been a very vibrant session, and as my co-chair mentioned, that being the last session, she always had to have the final word. Thank you all for your patience, and thank you to the organizers of this conference because of the last technical session. And now we break for tea before we.
Thank you, Your Lordship. With this, we conclude our sessions on the South Zone Regional Conference. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the chair, co-chair, and esteemed panelists for a session that truly enriched us. Now, it is time to present a token of our appreciation to the dignitaries. May I now request Shri Sarfaraz Hussain Sir, Deputy Director, Karnataka Judicial Academy, to kindly present mementos to the dignitaries on the dais. I thank the dignitaries for accepting our token of appreciation. We will now break for a short break. I request all the participants to reassemble at 12:10 p.m. for the valedictory function. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It is like sealing your house. Yesterday, dinner was there.
Where are we supposed to go now?
ಸರ್ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ 15 ಮಿನಿಟ್ಸ್ ಹಾಗೆ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಸರ್ ಅವ್ರು ಬರೋದು ಕೂಡ. ಚಂದ್ರಪ್ಪ
ಇದ್ಯಾರ್ದು ಮೇಡಮ್? ಅನಿತಾ ಸುಮಂತ್ ಮೇಡಮ್
ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ನೋಡ್ರೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗ್ತದೆ ನಮಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿಗಿಂತ. ನೋಡಿಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲ
and Justice Srimati V.V. Nagaratna, with whose support the National Commission for Women, in collaboration with Supreme Court of India, is organizing a series of judges conferences across the country and initiating this with our first regional conference in association with the High Court of Karnataka and the Karnataka Judicial Academy.
Despite an extensive legal framework and decades of legislative reform, violence against women continues to persist across homes, workplaces, education institutions, and public spaces. Why does this continue despite decades of legislative reform? The reasons are complex and interrelated. They include entrenched social attitudes that perpetuate gender inequality, economic dependence, and heightened vulnerability. Unequal access to public spaces and institutional shortcomings such as delayed investigation, inadequate forensic support, low conviction rates, and insufficient gender sensitization within the justice delivery system.
The High Court has been denuded. High Court of Karnataka has been denuded of its jurisdiction to hear first appeals. What does this entail? A judgment and decree passed by a civil judge senior division is now appealable before a district court and not before the High Court, Dihos, Karnataka City. That means what? On a question, on a finding of fact, there can be no appeal to the High Court. What do women do if they are aggrieved by a finding of fact or an issue as to whether an item of property is joint family property or separate property. I mean, from the district court, they would have had to approach the Supreme Court to Article 136.
ಅದು ಇದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಈಗ ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಸರಿ ಹೋಯ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಸರಿ ಹೋಯ್ತಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಮೈಕ್ ಟೆಸ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ South Zone Regional Conference on Justice for Women.
A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. May we request everyone to kindly rise as the dignitaries are escorted to the dais. We respectfully welcome Honorable Srimati Justice V. Mohana, Judge, Supreme Court of India.
Honorable Srimati Justice Lisa Gill, Chief Justice, High Court of Andhra Pradesh, Patron-in-Chief, Andhra Pradesh State Legal Services Authority and Andhra Pradesh Judicial Academy.
Honorable Dr. Vijaya Rahatkar, Chairperson, National Commission for Women. May we request Srimati Saraswati Vishnu Kosundar, Director, Karnataka Judicial Academy, and Sri Manmohan Verma, Law Officer, National Commissioner for Women, to kindly escort the dignitaries to the dais.
Every meaningful journey leaves behind not merely memories, but thoughts that inspire, conversations that enlighten, and commitments that endure. Over the course of this conference, we have come together with a shared vision to reflect, deliberate, and reaffirm our collective resolve towards advancing justice, equality, and dignity for women.
As we arrive at the concluding chapter of this enriching journey, we pause to acknowledge the wisdom shared, the perspectives exchanged, and the collective spirit that has made this conference truly meaningful. It is therefore our privilege to welcome you all to the valedictory function of the South Zone Regional Conference on Justice for Women.
While every conference has an ending, the idea it inspires need not. May the reflections and deliberations of these days continue to resonate in our courts, institutions, and communities and translate into meaningful action for a more just and equitable society.
With that spirit of reflection, gratitude, and renewed commitment, we now proceed to the valedictory function.
With the kind permission of your ladyship, we shall now commence with the valedictory session. May I request everyone to kindly raise for the national song, followed by the Karnataka state anthem.
Thank you. Kindly be seated. It's an honor to acknowledge the distinguished personalities whose gracious presence has enriched this association. Their wisdom, experience, and commitment to the cause of justice is a source of inspiration to all of us. It is with the deepest respect and immense pleasure that we extend a warm welcome to our esteemed dignitaries.
It is our profound privilege to welcome Honorable Srimati Justice V. Mohana, Judge, Supreme Court of India, to this valedictory session. As we bring this enriching conference to its conclusion, your Ladyship's gracious presence lends a special significance to this occasion. We are deeply honored to have your Ladyship with us and extend our highest respect and a very warm welcome to your Ladyship.
May I request Sri Sudeep Jain, Member Secretary, National Commission for Women, to present a bouquet and a memento to Honorable Srimati Justice V. Mohana, Judge, Supreme Court of India, as a token of our gratitude.
It is our privilege to welcome Honorable Srimati Justice Lisa Gill, Chief Justice, High Court of Andhra Pradesh, Patron-in-Chief, Andhra Pradesh State Legal Services Authority, and Andhra Pradesh Judicial Academy.
Your Ladyship's leadership and passionate engagement with access to justice and judicial excellence continue to inspire the legal and judicial fraternity. We are deeply honored by your Ladyship's gracious presence.
May I now request Srimati Saraswati Vishnu Gosandar, Director, Karnataka Judicial Academy, to present a bouquet and a memento to Honorable Srimati Justice Lisa Gill, Chief Justice, High Court of Andhra Pradesh, Patron-in-Chief, Andhra Pradesh State Legal Services Authority, and Andhra Pradesh Judicial Academy as a token of our reverence.
We are privileged to welcome Honorable Dr. Vijaya Rahatkar, Chairperson, National Commission for Women. Madam, your exemplary dedication to promoting equality, justice, and the rights of women is truly commendable. Your presence today adds immense value and inspiration to this occasion. We are privileged to have you with us and extend our heartfelt and gracious welcome to you, Madam.
We now request Srimati H.R. Radha, Registrar Vigilance, High Court of Karnataka, to present a bouquet and a memento to Honorable Dr. Vijaya Rahatkar, Chairperson, National Commission for Women, as a token of our heartfelt appreciation.
Thank you, ma'am. We extend our respectful welcome to all the honorable judges of the southern states, registrars of the High Court of Karnataka and other high courts, officers of the Karnataka Judicial Academy, members and officers of the National Commission for Women, judicial officers, mediators, resource persons, members of the bar, academicians, distinguished invitees, media representatives, and all our esteemed participants.
Your participation, insights, and engagement have enriched this conference and contributed meaningfully to its success.
We sincerely thank each one of you for being a valued part of this important dialogue on justice for women.
A conference such as this finds its true purpose in the ideas it generates and resolve its inspires.
It is now our privilege to hear from a distinguished leader whose work has been dedicated to advancing the rights, dignity, and empowerment of women.
May I now request Honorable Dr. Vijaya Rahatkar, Chairperson, National Commission for Women, to
Honorable Justice Srimati B.V. Nagaratna, Honorable Justice Srimati V. Mohana, Honorable Chief Justice Shri Vibhu Bakru, Honorable Chief Justice Srimati Lisa Gill, Honorable Chief Justice Shri Jayant Banerjee, Honorable Justice S.G. Pandit, Honorable High Court Judges of Southern Zone, Registrar General High Court of Karnataka, Director and other officers of Karnataka Judicial Academy, distinguished judicial officers, registrars, esteemed panelists, mediators, representative of legal services authorities, and all other participants who have stayed with us through these 2 important days. What a wonderful session, and what a great involvement of all the participants for the theme of justice for women. Over the past 1.5 days, this hall has been more than a venue for speeches and technical sessions. It has been a space of candid reflection, rigorous examination, and shared resolve. In these 2 days, we have touched topics like access to justice for women, gender sensitization, workplace safety, the role of mediation, and the particular challenges confronting our family courts. I have listened to enforcement agencies acknowledge with refreshing candor. I hear judges reflect on need for greater sensitivity, not as an abstract ideal, but as a daily discipline of adjudication. I have heard survivors' realities echoed through the voices of those who work closer to them. Over these 2 days, we have spoken frankly about the persistent gap that still separates the promise of the law from the lived experience of women seeking justice. I would like to share an instance where a brutal murder case, which shook the entire country, the judgment could not be delivered timely. It was Shraddha Walkar case of 2022, which is a painful example of how justice can be delayed for years. Shraddha was a young woman who was killed by her living relationship partner, Apta Punawala, who cut her body into pieces, kept them in refrigerator, and later threw these pieces on the various streets of Delhi. The victim's father died in February last year while waiting for justice for his daughter. He passes away without seeing justice getting delivered. Her grandmother has also passed away. There is an aunt who travels from Mumbai to Delhi every time when there is a hearing. The hearing was repeatedly postponed in the name of dental treatment, psychiatric treatment, and exams of the accused who was pursuing master's in sociology. Now, the citizen of country is asking whether sociology exam or dental checkup of the accused who did a cold-blooded brutal murder is so important that justice cannot be delivered for 4 years. We need to be sensitive in such cases and introspect. Are we really giving justice to the victim and her family? Providing justice is important, but ensuring the trust in the eyes of citizens that the justice delivered is more important. I want to share another example of recent incidents of the heinous case of Nasrapur in Maharashtra. We shook the entire country where a 3-year-old girl was brutally sexually assaulted and murdered by a person of 65 years of age who was a habitual offender. I would appreciate that the police and judiciary work very effectively in this case. A 1,200-page charge sheet was filed within 16 days of the incidents, and a special POXO court in Pune tried the matter on fast-track basis, where the court sentenced him to death by hanging, classifying the offense as falling within the rarest of rare category in just 56 days. These are two contrasting examples, which shows that if the investigation agencies and judiciary decides to provide justice, it can be provided within a span of days. I want to urge you that at least in the heinous cases of crime against women, the trial may be conducted. The trial may be concluded, if not within days, at least in few months, so that the victim and her family feel that the justice is delivered timely. Judiciary is the last resort for anyone, and for women, it is even more difficult. For many women, approaching a court is an act of courage. The justice process must make survivor feel supported, respected, and protected, not intimidated or distressed. Sensitivity strengthens rather than weakens the justice system. Timely decision, respectful courtroom conduct, and protection of privacy are essential for building trust. A court order is only the beginning. Timely interim relief, effective enforcement of protection and residence orders, and close coordination with protection officers and district periodically review whether their orders are being effectively implemented. A woman's struggle does not necessarily end when a court awards her maintenance. Too often, that is when another struggle begins for its execution. I urge our courts to use their existing powers of attachment and contempt proactively, so that a woman is not compelled to return repeatedly to seek enforcement of an order of maintenance already passed in her favor. These 2 days must not conclude as a mere deliberation. They must mark the beginning of tangible change in how women encounter the justice system, whether in a police station, a mediation room, a family court, or a courtroom dealing with crimes against women. I would ask every person in this hall to treat that commitment as a personal charge and not merely an institutional one. Many of you will return after today to a high court, a district court, a legal service authority, a mediation center in your own state. The recommendations that emerge from the conference of this nature are only ever as strong as the individuals who are willing to carry them home, to place them before their colleagues, and to act upon them in the daily exercise of their responsibilities. Institutes create frameworks. People give those frameworks life. The experience of this conference has reinforced a truth that is simple, yet often overlooked. No single institution can deliver justice to women alone. The National Commission for Women can identify issues, recommend reforms, monitor implementation, and stand firmly with survivors. But the actual delivery of justice, whether through the sensitive framing of charges, the timely grant of interim compensation, the effective enforcement of protective and maintenance orders, or the creation of a courtroom atmosphere that does not re-traumatize, rests primarily with the judiciary, the legal services authorities represented in this hall. Justice for women is a shared constitutional responsibility. It requires coordination rather than silos, and a willingness to measure success not by the volume of cases disposed of, but by the quality of protection and redress actually experienced by those who come seeking it. I leave Bengaluru with 3 clear hopes. First, that the interim compensation in cases of heinous offenses, regular and meaningful gender sensitization of judicial officers, stronger and more independent audits of internal committees under the POSH Act, and the consistent use of existing criminal databases and protective mechanisms will not remain conference recommendations on paper. I hope they will find concrete expression in administrative circulars, judicial practice, and the everyday working of institutions across the South Zone and beyond. Second, that the dialogue begun here between the judiciary, the National Commission for Women, law enforcement agencies, legal services authorities, and civil society will not end when we leave this academy. I hope it will continue as a living conversation through follow-up meetings, shared learning, and collaborative monitoring so that the insights of these 2 days are refined, tested, and translated into substance action. Third, that every participant will carry back from this conference not merely a set of notes, but a renewed personal resolve, a resolve to narrow, wherever possible, the distance between the law as it is written and the law as women actually experience it in police station, in courtrooms, in mediation room, and in the process of seeking redressal. I once again place on record my deep appreciation to the High Court of Karnataka and the Karnataka Judicial Academy for their partnership, their meticulous organization, and their warm hospitality. The seamless conduct of this conference reflects the commitment by them for this theme. I offer my special gratitude to Honorable Chief Justice of India, Justice Suryakant sir, and Honorable Justice B.V. Nagaratna madam. Without their continuous support, this initiative could not have been possible. Presence of Honorable Ladyship lent quiet strength and moral weight to our discussions and reminded us of the high standards of judicial leadership that this country continues to produce. To every judge who moderated or participated, to every panelist who spoke with honesty, to every mediator who shared practical insights, and to every participant who stayed engaged through long sessions. Thank you. Your presence and your candor have made this conference meaningful. May the work we have begun with these walls travel far beyond them. May it reach the women who stand at the threshold of police station, the women who wait for maintenance orders to be enforced, the women who sit through hearings that test their endurance, and the young girls whose futures depend on our collective vigilance. The Supreme Court, as the custodian of the Constitution, is also entrusted to protect the rights promised by it. Like right to life also includes right to live a dignified life. Therefore, the Honorable Supreme Court is also custodian of women's dignity. Every time a court protects a woman's dignity, it strengthens the Constitution. A sensitive courtroom builds trust in justice. When the judiciary and other institutes work together, we move closer to an India where every woman experiences justice with dignity, equality, and hope. Let us go back to our respective states and make sure that no woman ever feels alone in her search for justice. Let every courtroom under our care be a sanctuary of dignity, speed, and fairness. Every time we uphold a woman's dignity, we strengthen the soul of our nation. Let us go forward together and deliver the justice our woman truly deserves. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Madam, for your inspiring address and for sharing your valuable insights and perspectives. Your words will certainly enrich our collective resolve towards advancing justice for women.
We now come to a significant moment of this valedictory session. It is our distinct privilege to request Honorable Srimati Justice Lisa Gill, Chief Justice, High Court of Andhra Pradesh, Patron-in-Chief, Andhra Pradesh Judicial Academy and Andhra Pradesh State Legal Services Authority to deliver the keynote address.
Honorable Srimati Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge Supreme Court of India, Honorable Srimati Justice V. Mohana, Judge Supreme Court of India, Justice Vibhu Bhakru, Chief Justice High Court of Karnataka, Patron-in-Chief of the Karnataka Judicial Academy and Mediation Center, Justice Jayant Banerjee, Judge High Court of Karnataka and President Karnataka Judicial Academy, Justice S.G. Pandit, Judge High Court of Karnataka and President Karnataka Mediation Center, Shrimati Vijaya Rahatkar, Chairperson, National Commission for Women, all the distinguished panelists who are here, sister and brother judges from the high courts in the South Zone, including my sisters and brothers from Andhra Pradesh, members of the district judiciary in the South Zone, learned advocates, mediators, distinguished delegates, participants, and all stakeholders present today in this distinguished gathering. Andariki, Alirigu, Namaskar. As we come to a close of an extremely interesting and thought-provoking conference on justice for women, though let me admit, when we hear the title, it appears cliched, but it is clearly not. We've had the privilege of listening to eloquent and erudite speakers since yesterday morning on this topic with special reference to the specific issues and topics which I will not repeat. Perhaps this moment, as I'm tasked to give the keynote address, it calls for a simple reflection. What do we mean when we say justice for women? This phrase clearly encompasses a very broad spectrum, that is equality and dignity, access to justice, safety and security, which is economic as well, social independence, the right to work without fear, the right to live without violence, the right to participate fully and equally in society. From all the deliberations which have been held, one thing emerges, and it is quite apparent that we are slowly but surely transitioning from a patriarchal mindset of saving women to a constitutional mindset of securing their inherent rights. Protection is not the final destination, it has to be freedom. Freedom for a woman to be born, as had been pointed out by Justice Nagratna, to study, to work, to choose our options, to speak. Freedom to leave an abusive relationship without losing the possibility of a secure future. Freedom to live without constantly having to calculate the risk of being a woman. Law can create a remedy. An institution can provide a forum. Court can pronounce an order. But justice is complete only when a woman can actually move forward with her life. We indeed have miles to go before we can dispense with the need and requirement of having conferences like the present. We are at a very critical juncture where we shift focus from this protection to holistic empowerment. Figures which have been given throughout the sessions are indeed alarming. We live in a space where 51 complaints by aggrieved women are lodged per hour. Digital space, as had just been said, mainly the victims are majority are women. If I may first refer to the issue of legal aid and advice. The approach has rightly been stated by speakers in the first session should be for providing a wider, holistic umbrella rather than just focusing on providing a lawyer or legal aid as may be required by the women. Providing this wider umbrella of services, including legal services, is indeed a fierce declaration of constitutional equality. By guaranteeing this kind of legal aid, which provides for solutions instead of just facilitating litigation, it enables leveling of a drastically uneven playing field. It is my fervent plea that legal aid should not be viewed in a narrow compass. Let us think out of the box. Let there be an outreach, as is the need of the hour, and look to provide solutions. We, in this regard, should further mobilize our legal aid councils, paralegal volunteers, stakeholders associated with the state, taluk, district legal services authorities to ensure that constitutional guarantees of dignity and due process do not evaporate upon arrest of a female accused. As it is, she faces a very unique systemic vulnerability. A woman, unlike a male, more often than not, even faces abandonment by her family in such a situation, including her parental family. Let these periodic inspections which are carried out at jails be not empty formalities, but a positive step for improvement of our system. And related to this, moving on to the question of victim compensation, may I say, compensation is not a price tag on suffering. It is a process of fueling the journey of survival. Yesterday, a heart-rending account was given by Ms. Pragya Prasoon, founder of Atijivan, for whom this account was a lived reality. A victim indeed has to be respected as an individual for whom society as a whole is responsible for providing all measures for healing and complete rehabilitation. Apart from legal aid, immediate financial relief, medical care, psychological counseling should be made available to the victim under one roof. As it is, the victim has undergone a trauma. The process of rehabilitation should not be made into another traumatic experience. And at this stage, the need of filtering false claims, it is indeed imperative. But may I add a small caveat at this stage? Such false claims should not make us cynical, untrusting of claims which may otherwise be genuine. These false claims should not create a mindset in all of us where we start with a presumption that the claim is false. Let that not happen to us. Let us guard against it. Then Moving on, the next section that was held was mediation, which has often been criticized to be a compromise with rightful fruits of justice being denied. However, experience has shown this to be incorrect. Mediation has indeed proved to be a useful tool, rightly stated to be providing a win-win situation for all. It allows both, may I say, men and women to negotiate issues of alimony, maintenance, child custody without being drained and fatigued by decades of litigation. But for a woman, the compromise will become truly meaningful only when we are able to ensure that her choice in arriving at this compromise is free. This should be the goal in the mediation process, especially related to women. And moving on, in the second session, which was held yesterday, an extremely sensitive topic of gender sensitivity and safety of women in the workplace was discussed. It is indeed a sad state of affairs that the cultural revolution, which was meant to be ushered in with the ultimate promulgation of POSH Act, is yet to take off in its true sense. I say this with all responsibility. At this stage, I would like to share that in the year 2019, a program was held in my parent High Court for our women employees in the High Court to sensitize them about their rights under the POSH Act. Hard to believe it may be for you, but the female employees of the High Court to a large extent were not even aware of the provisions of this Act. Some of them expressed complete ignorance of this Act. This led to a further revelation that majority of male employees did not even realize that some of their actions, words, gestures, which they considered normal, fell well within the four corners of POSH Act. Herein lies the factor of stereotypes and what has been assumed to be acceptable behavior on the part of males, and more disturbingly, accepted to be normal by the females as well. The dire need to educate men and women alike in this respect is apparent. Then another important aspect was regarding safety of women. Statistics prove that apart from being unable to provide a safe working environment, safety of women is not assured either in her own home or in public places. We had the police personnel admitting it, so it's not safe. I personally found it very disturbing coming from police personnel. I may say it is indeed a myth when it is said that what happens behind closed doors is a private matter. This is something we have often heard. What happened in our home is nobody's business. But any act which lends harm or prejudice to a woman, either physically or mentally, cannot remain in the private domain. It can't be a private matter. It has to be ensured that it does not. The law does and indeed should cross the threshold of the home in such cases. In respect to safety of women in public places too, laws are in place. But the question is, how far and properly are we able to implement them? All stakeholders included. And as if our plate was not full, we are now confronted with, as had been said by Justice Jaishankar, the devil of digital space. That is a frontier which did not exist a generation ago. In this vastly unknown space, women are targeted by, if I may use the term, weaponization of data, viral spread of non-consensual, maybe intimate images, relentless cyber stalking, deep fakes, this demon stares at us. The bytes and pixels of internet may be virtual, but the trauma they inflict is devastatingly real. A message has to go that by leveraging Information Technology Act and our updated criminal laws with an interplay between them, virtual violence will also meet swift real-life consequences. The digital world must not be allowed to become a safe haven for culprits hiding behind screens. Certainty of action. This is across the board. Certainty of action in these matters, timelines within which it is done, timely rehabilitation, They need to become a lived reality and an assurance to each woman. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let us try to bring, may I flag at this time, a revolution in our own thoughts and attitudes. Something which I feel very closely about is, please let us bring up our boys correctly. Let this education start at home and in schools. Let us free ourselves first of gender stereotypes. Let us challenge the accepted norm and then remind ourselves that laws are only as powerful as the society that enforces them. Finest legislation written on parchment cannot replace active vigilance in practice. There may be 1,000 laws, but if a woman is still to be blamed for the violence inflicted on her, if she is still discouraged from filing a complaint, if she is still isolated by her workplace, her family, she is denied wholesome integration in society, it is clear that the system has failed her. What we need now is the resolve to use the statutory framework and the tools in our hands to bring about this revolution, to build a nation where justice is not a luxury or a battle to be feared, a nation where each and every woman can walk the streets, work in her office, negotiate digital spaces, live in this world freely without fear, with her head held high. Albert Einstein, I think, had said that the world is a dangerous place to live in, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. So let us choose to act and do what is expected of all of us. I am particularly grateful to Honorable Justice Nagaratna and the organizers of this conference to have afforded me this opportunity to address all of you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Your Ladyship, for your heartfelt and motivating address. Your Ladyship's insights gave us deep lessons to carry past this conference.
Every meaningful conference reaches its culmination not merely with a conclusion, but with renewed thought, commitment, and purpose. It is therefore our profound privilege to request one of the highest voices of our judiciary to deliver the valedictory address.
May I respectfully request Honorable Srimati Justice V. Mohana, Judge Supreme Court of India, to deliver the valedictory address.
My respected sister, Justice Nagaratna, Chief Justice Vibhu Pakru, and Chief Justice from all the southern high courts and the other judges, respected dignitaries of the dais, ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon to all of you. Normally, when I go to speak somewhere, I don't really prepare. I just think about it and say that which comes for the occasion from my heart. This issue, the present topic that we are all actually discussing, is also something which is very close to all our hearts. But considering the seriousness and the time constraint and the topic, which can go varied from several interested topics to very serious topics. So I thought I will probably prepare a stricter speech so that all the thoughts can be cumulatively explained. Actually, after hearing all the earlier speakers and some part of it from yesterday through the video, I'm sorry I could not be present yesterday personally due to personal reasons, but I must thank the respected Sister Judge Justice Nagaratna for giving me this opportunity to address all of you in the Southern Zone Regional Conference on the theme of justice for women. I want to say some positive aspects of the developments that have happened over a period of years. So therefore, after listening to all of you, though we have a long way to go, I would want to share a few thoughts with you on this. The discussions spanning from yesterday in various sessions relating to varied topics, ranging from such as legal aid to women, victim compensation, POSH Act, justice for women through mediation, and safety for women in workplaces and in the households and in the digital space, or actually in respect of different areas which affect women from their birth till the end, as Justice Nagaratna would mention yesterday. At one level, this has been a discussion about different laws affecting women, but at a deeper level, every session has examined something much larger. Each discussion has reflected a different point at which a woman encounters challenges in different institutions, be it a workplace, be it family, be it a courtroom, or be it a mediation center. Each of these institutions represent the state in different forms, but all of them lead to one common constitutional question. Do our institutions see women as equal constitutional citizens or merely as persons requiring protection? The Constitution always demanded and meant the former, and the distinction actually lies at the heart of the constitutional journey. For much of our legal history, protective legislation represented an important constitutional response to entrench social inequalities. Abolition of sati, abolition of dowry, and other such laws ought to address these inequalities in the beginning by extending protections where none had previously existed. It was at that point of time necessary and important, but constitutional thought has never remained static, nor are the problems. As our democracy has matured and our women have spread their wings and started entering, our understanding of equality has also matured. Today, the constitutional question is no longer simply how should the law protect women? It is increasingly how should the law remove the barriers that prevent the women from exercising equal freedom? This is not merely a shift in a doctrine or a rule. It is a shift in the entire constitutional jurisprudence towards a gendered interpretation of the Constitution and its various facets, such as Article 14, 15, 16, 21, Directive Principles of State Policy, and 243D, which provides reservation for women in all tiers of the panchayats. Our constitutional courts have steadily enabled this revolution and expanded scope and meaning and interpreted provisions of the Constitution which enable the women to attain the safe and an equal atmosphere, either it be an educational institution or it be a workplace or in their matrimonial life, to name a few. In Vishaka, the Supreme Court recognized that a safe workplace is not merely an employment concern. It is intrinsic to equality, dignity, and the right of every woman to work with freedom. The court brought the promise of CEDA, that is Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, into implementation. The Supreme Court noticed that there was no guidelines or norms to provide for the effective enforcement of the basic human right of gender equality and guarantee against sexual harassment and abuse, properly known as Vishaka guidelines. These guidelines ultimately became the foundation for the POSH Act 2013. The court noted that right to work with dignity is a universally recognized basic human right, and in the absence of a domestic law, international conventions assume great significance in judicial formulation of the guidelines. I agree when Justice Lisa Gill would mention that, of course, this act is in place after a long time after Vishaka was pronounced. However, many of us, we come to know that many people in the country are not even aware of such a legislation, nor are the men or women sensitized about their application. So periodical programs are being conducted from all the courts and all the institutions. Now, the awareness is most important in getting the goals. In Anuj Garg, while examining the restrictions on women's employment, the court warned against what is described as romantic paternalism, the tendency to deny women opportunities in the name of protecting them. Constitutional equality, the court reminded us, cannot rest upon assumptions about what women are capable of doing. Women not only need a safe working environment, but also equal opportunity. Equality today is not merely a formal equality, it is substantive equality. It requires institutions to recognize that historical disadvantage often demands structural change. It requires us to dismantle barriers rather than merely create exceptions. It is because of this that the courts rise to the occasion, and it is for the courts which have to properly give a meaningful interpretation to the provisions which have been granted by our constitution. In the case of one Uma Devi, for example, the appellant was denied maternity leave for her third child from a second marriage, as her first two children, though in her ex-husband's custody, were counted against the two-child limit under the rules framed by the state. A single judge allowed her claim. The division bench reversed it. On appeal by her, the Supreme Court interpreted that life under 21, Article 21 means life in its fullest sense, which makes life more meaningful, worth living like a human being. The court employed the tool of purposive interpretation to do justice in this case. The object of controlling the population growth in the country and the object of providing maternity benefit to women employees are not mutually exclusive. The two must be harmonized in a purposive and rational manner to achieve the social objective, is what the court said. The right of a woman includes the right to health, the right to live with human dignity, the right to privacy, the right to make reproductive choices, not restricted to right of women to have or not to have children, but also includes constellation of freedoms and entitlements that enable women to decide freely on all matters relating to her sexual and reproductive health. So, in matters of termination of pregnancy by a woman who has been affected by a host of circumstances, the court said the decision to carry the pregnancy to its full term or terminate it is firmly rooted in the right to bodily autonomy and decisional autonomy of the pregnant woman. When we talk about dismantling barriers, we need to reject stereotypes. The Constitution does not assign roles, it guarantees freedom, protects choices, and secures dignity. Dignity is not a narrow idea. It is not merely freedom from violence, it includes autonomy, participation, economic opportunity, bodily integrity, access to justice, freedom from stereotypes, and above all, the ability to make meaningful choices about one's own life. The constitutional evolution naturally brings us to the second and perhaps the most important question. What is the responsibility of our institutions? Because constitutional promises acquire meaning only when institutions give responsibility. Courts do more often resolve disputes. Every judgment interprets constitutional values. Even the language employed in judicial decisions influence how society understands equality. The words used in our judgments shape legal culture. They influence institutional behavior. They shape public attitudes. The constitutional commitments to dignity, therefore, requires not only fair outcomes but also fair process. Justice must not only be done, but it must also be experienced with dignity. When it comes to access to justice for women through legal aid, advice, right of the female accused, compensation, rehabilitation for victims of sexual harassment, acid attack, human trafficking, etc., the reforms introduced in the aftermath of Nirbhaya's case marked a significant shift in our criminal justice framework. They sought not merely to strengthen penal consequences, but to make the justice system more responsive to the needs and dignity of the survivors. The law today recognizes important safeguards from the right to register the zero FIR, irrespective of a territorial jurisdiction, to the right to free legal aid, the right to have statements recorded with the due regard to privacy and dignity, and protection of survivors' identity. The law has also evolved to recognize the distinct needs of acid attack survivors and to provide them with medical aid as well as compensation. The legal services authorities occupy an equally significant constitutional decision. Access to justice cannot depend upon financial capacity or social privilege. Legal aid is a right and not a charity. It is constitutional empowerment. For women situated at the margins, whether because of poverty, disability, caste, religion, geography, or other forms of exclusion, the legal services authorities often became the bridge between constitutional rights and lived reality. Family courts and mediation centers carry an equally delicate responsibility. Litigation rarely heals fractured families. In my experience, mediation often provides women with something that formal adjudication cannot:
a safe and meaningful space to express their concerns, whether about their matrimonial home, financial security, or the welfare of their children. Mediation has offered a long lasting form of peace to women. At the same time, we must remember that arriving at a settlement cannot become an end in itself. Consent must always be informed. Compromise must never legitimate unequal power. The objective of family justice must retain fairness, dignity, and constitutional equality. At the cost of repeating myself, I want to highlight that although these institutions are shaped by society, institutions also shape the society. There are moments when constitutional morality requires institutions not merely to reflect prevailing social attitudes, but to lead social transformation. Today, we have traveled far from Vishaka, and our courts have recognized the value of domestic work and services of homemaker. The court has taken into account the gendered nature of housework, with an overwhelming percentage of women being engaged in the same as compared to men. The fixing of notional income of homemaker will show the recognition of the work, labor, and sacrifices of a homemaker and the reflection of changing attitudes. In Prabha Tyagi's case, the court, while noting that the appellant was widowed within a month of her marriage when the husband died in a road accident, leaving her pregnant, and when it was found that her in-laws subjected her to harassment and retained her Sridhan, denied her rights in the matrimonial property, and questioned the legitimacy of her child, the Supreme Court, in a judgment written by Sister Justice Nagaratna, that every woman in domestic relationship has a right to reside in a shared household, whether or not she has any right, title, or beneficial interest in the property. While holding that a magistrate can grant interim ex parte final relief even without the domestic incident report, it was held that actual residence is not mandatory, and a woman having the right to reside in the shared household can seek the relief even though she was not residing in the same house at the time of the violence. It was held that it is sufficient that a domestic relationship existed with the alleged domestic violence occurred, and it need not continue when the application was filed. In matters of maintenance, even in respect of Muslim women, it has been held that both financial security and security of residence of Indian women have to be protected and enhanced. The court, in a leading judgment, again by our sister, Justice Nagaratna, held that the protection of these Indian women will truly empower those who are referred to as homemakers society. That it goes without saying that a stable family, which is emotionally connected and secure, gives stability to the society, for it is within the family that precious values of life are learnt and built. The court held that equivalent rights of maintenance ascertained under both the secular provisions of 125 and Section 125 CRPC and personal law provisions of Section 3 of the 86 Act parallelly exist in their distinct domains and jurisprudence. The court constructed the provision harmoniously and affirmed the right of a Muslim woman to seek maintenance. In my law college, when I went in 83-88, there were very few women. The washroom at the rented building of the college was barely functional. The challenge was not merely infrastructural, it was also one of social imagination. For many families those days, law was synonymous to only litigation, and it meant going to places where criminals and accused frequent. Parents would not naturally become concerned, and teaching profession was considered as the safest for women. Even when young women pursued legal education, many did not enroll themselves. Those who did often found themselves in offices where there were hardly any females. In a place where I was working in the Chamber of Seven, there were no other girls at that point of time, though I was fortunate to have a dignified workspace and respectable office. Majority of the offices in the district court and spaces were not designed with women practitioners in mind, and they were virtually non-existent. Much has changed since then. Today, many parents encourage their daughters to study law. Governments and institutions have invested in better infrastructure. The legal profession itself has expanded far beyond the traditional courtroom, offering opportunities in academia, corporate practice, public policy, alternative dispute mechanism, cyber law, media law, and several other subjects. Most importantly, Women themselves have transformed the profession through their competence, commitment, and excellence. Yet, we have to go a long way. In one of the recent cases where it was pointed out by the Supreme Court that majority of the country lacked safe court complexes, functional washrooms, childcare facilities, accessible workspaces, and secure working conditions for women, which are actually not matters of convenience. These are conditions that will enable equal participation, which will enable women accessibility, inclusiveness, and long-term sustainability in the legal profession. If this is about the legal profession, there are many other careers and workplaces. There are domestic workers and women in household who face different varieties of inequalities and disadvantages. Legal aid, safety of work environment, mediation in disputes, domestic violence were a far cry, and there were not structural policies and practices in force. However, over a period of time in these 40 years, I have seen that though legislations and constitutional interpretations, through legislations and constitutional interpretations by various high courts and the Supreme Court of India, the women inclusivity and access to justice in workplaces and in domestic areas, including matrimonial and other areas, have keep discussing justice for women. Women constitute half the population of our country. We encounter numerous problems in various fields and we have many milestones to be crossed. The gender of a person should never determine the place that they have to achieve. We need diversity and equality, but these are unfinished tasks, and we all realize that it is an ongoing process, and it is conferences such as these that will enable us to have a deeper understanding of our rights, the law, and the renewed commitment to the constitutional values that animate it. For the true measure of gender justice will not only lie in the judgments that we pronounce or the laws that we enact. It will lie in whether every woman, irrespective of her background or circumstance, experience the Constitution not merely as a document of rights, but as a living guarantee of dignity. As we look ahead, new challenges continue to emerge. Institutions is not merely to regulate technology after harm has occurred. It is to ensure that technological progress itself remains anchored to constitutional values. Innovation cannot come at the cost of dignity. Technology has transformed both opportunity and vulnerability. Artificial intelligence, deepfakes, cyberstalking, image-based abuse, algorithmic bias, and online harassment present questions that traditional legal frameworks were never designed to answer. I would also like to highlight intersectionality that reminds us that discrimination is rarely experienced through a single identity. The experiences of rural women, women with disabilities, members of scheduled castes and tribes, religious minorities, and other marginalized communities require institutions to recognize the multiple and overlapping forms of exclusion that many women continue to face. Perhaps the time has also come for a broader conversation on whether India requires a comprehensive anti-discrimination framework for women, one that addresses discrimination not merely through criminal sanctions, but also through effective civil remedies in areas such as employment, housing, education, and access to public spaces. Though our women have fought and got their places in the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, where the courts have granted rights and rejected the arguments founded on physical strength and weaknesses of women, and on assumptions that women in the social context of marriage and family, holding that they do not constitute a constitutionally valued basis for denying equal opportunity to them. And though there has been successive orders in matters on prevention of trafficking and rehabilitation of sex workers who wish to leave sex work and make conditions conducive for them, we have miles to go. In the earlier sessions, as has been recommended, that we have to create a way forward by making several changes and in our timelines in respect of crimes against women and also offenses relating to matrimony. We need to periodically train and give orientation to our judicial officers for dealing with the cases and empathy, and also about the fact that dignity and confidentiality of survivors, victims must be ensured. Areas of victim compensation, mediation, and cybercrime against women need to be addressed by sensitizing the judicial officers through judicial academies, etc. Equally important is education and awareness. Respect for constitutional values cannot begin only when the dispute reaches the courtrooms. It must begin in classrooms and continue in workplaces. Children are very impressionable and they learn it from families, schools, and fellow beings. Therefore, teaching constitutional values, mutual respect, is not solely the responsibility of the courts or governments, it's a shared social responsibility. We must create conferences such as this that will create greater awareness within rural and marginalized communities. Although statutes are formally in place, the promise of justice remains only partially fulfilled. True progress requires us to sensitize all segments of society, including men, through awareness programs and conferences such as this. I congratulate the National Commission for Women for organizing this conference, and I thank the Karnataka High Court and the Judicial Academy for this conference. And I'm sure this will be one of the greatest steps forward getting access to justice for all women in a meaningful and a dignified manner. Thank you all for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Your Ladyship, for that profound and inspiring address.
As we draw this enriching conference to a close, it is time to express our sincere gratitude to all those whose support, participation, and commitment have made this conference meaningful and memorable.
May I now request Shri Sudeep Jain, Member Secretary, National Commission for Women, to propose the vote of thanks.
Honorable Justice B.V. Nagaratna, Judge, Supreme Court of India. Honorable Justice V. Mohana, Judge, Supreme Court of India. Honorable Chief Justice Vibhu Bakru, Karnataka High Court. Honorable Chief Justice Lisa Gill, Andhra Pradesh High Court. Honorable Justice Banerjee, President of this Academy. Honorable Justice Pandit, President, Karnataka Mediation Center. Honorable Chairperson of National Commission for Women, Srimati Vijaya Ratkar. Honorable Judges, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the conclusion of these 2 extraordinary days, I rise to offer a vote of thanks. But I would like to begin with the thought from which this conference itself was born. At the National Commission for Women, we deal every day with women whose rights have been violated. We intervene with the police, we seek action, we follow investigations, and we press for timely filing of charge sheets. But we began asking ourselves a larger question. Can our responsibility end when the charge sheet is filed? Surely not. A woman does not approach the state merely for an FIR, an investigation, or a charge sheet. She comes seeking justice. And justice means the entire journey, from complaint to investigation, from investigation to trial, from an order to its actual enforcement, and ultimately from trauma towards rehabilitation and dignity. It was this thought that led our chairperson, Srimati Vijaya Ratkar, to meet the Honorable Chief Justice of India and suggest that perhaps NCW and the judiciary could come together for a conference devoted to this larger idea of justice for women. The Honorable Chief Justice of India immediately agreed and introduced to Honorable Justice Nagaratna. And from that point onwards, Justice Nagaratna ma'am did not merely encourage the conference, she made it her own. Over the last couple of months, your ladyship devoted several hours personally to its design, identifying the subjects, helping choose the finest panelists, thinking through how the discussion should be structured, and even attending to whether our participants would be comfortable and well fed. From jurisprudence to hospitality, nothing was too large and nothing too small. Justice Nagratna ma'am, National Commission for Women owes you a very special debt of gratitude for having taken this wonderful lead. And the collective vision of this conference has been brilliantly executed by Karnataka Judicial Academy, led by Justice Jayant Banerjee, with the support of Chief Justice Vibhu Bhakru. I'm sure each of us will go back with the level of hospitality that we have experienced, which is par excellence. It would be extremely difficult for us to look for matching this kind of a hospitality in our subsequent series of conferences. That's the bar that has been held here. The sensitivity which the team, the staff, everybody, they have been so sensitive to each of our needs and ensuring that the entire deliberations, entire experience is so seamless. Justice Nagratna ma'am, your inspiring opening remarks yesterday gave this conference not merely a beginning but a direction. The equally thoughtful and comprehensive remarks of Honorable Chief Justice Vibhu Bhakru and our chairperson Srimati Vijaya Hatkar placed before us from different institutional perspectives the challenge of converting legal rights into lived justice. Over these 2 days, there have been of time, I will mention only a couple of those. Though each speaker was brilliant and par excellence, Justice Anu Shivraman and Justice Dr. Anita Sumant set the tone for the conference with their insightful talks, while Ms. Pragya Prasun gave us an inside view of a survivor's long and torturous battle. Justice Maushmi Bhattacharya reminded us that gender sensitivity is not simply knowledge of gender laws. It is a way of looking at facts, language, and institutions. One of the questions in her presentation was particularly striking. If the genders of the parties were reversed, would our reasoning or our language change? She also reminded us of the danger of the so-called ideal victim, the assumption that a genuine survivor must behave, react, or report in a particular way. The law must judge facts against legal standards, not women against stereotypes. Dr. Sathe beautifully explained the science of how stereotypes are formed in our brains. That understanding should help us in the long fight to bring gender equality in the society. Mr. Shriram Panchu's excellent session brought home the enormous importance of mediation in matrimonial and family disputes, especially. Adjudication determines rights, but skilled mediation can heal relationships, reduce conflict, and most importantly, protect children from becoming casualties of litigation. Justice Nambia rightly requested NCW to pursue rewriting statutes where we still have patriarchal bias written in that. It's a very valid suggestion, and we'll definitely at NCW like to take it forward. Ms. Shikha Goyal drove home the challenges before women in digital space globally. There were, again, many other brilliant speakers. I'll not be able to cover each of them. I'll just would like to leave this gathering with one number. We have approximately 250 judges participating here. If on an average, each has about 15 years of judicial service ahead and handles around 1,000 matters a year, ma'am, I'm taking an average. We have younger judges also. 15 years, and if 1,000 cases a year are what are handled by each of you, the judges in this hall will collectively touch approximately 37 lakh future cases. If just 10% of those cases are handled differently because of something reflected upon during these 2 days, we are speaking of 3.7 lakh lives touched. Behind every number is a person. And we have all discussed, deliberated last 2 days on what an individual woman, a survivor, a victim actually looks forward to. I'll not come into that, but each case has human lives behind it. I would like to thank every chair, co-chair, and panelist who shared not merely knowledge but experience. Every judge who participated so actively, the High Court of Karnataka, Karnataka Judicial Academy, and Karnataka Mediation Center, and all the officers and staff who worked tirelessly behind the scene. I will be failing in my duty if I don't thank the Chief Justices of all the 5 southern states, all the 5 southern high courts who nominated all of you here. My special thanks to all the Chief Justices. I would especially thank Honorable Justice V. Mohana and Honorable Chief Justice Lisa Gill for enriching this valedictory session with their presence and insightful and thought-provoking talks. Your inspiring words will surely resonate much beyond this session today. I also thank Chairperson NCW Srimati Vijaya Rahatkar, who pursued our original conviction that NCW must follow a women's journey all the way to justice and made this first of the series of conferences a reality. The best vote of thanks, however, will not be spoken from this dais. It will be delivered in hundreds of courtrooms in the years ahead when urgency is recognized a little earlier, a stereotype is consciously rejected, an interim order comes in time, mediation is used wisely, or the language of judgments preserves rather than diminishes dignity. If that happens, this conference will not have concluded today. It will have only begun. I would like to end with an incident. I'll share the incident a few months ago. We 3 batchmates were sitting and then discussing for almost an hour on what all needs to be changed in government and how their things are so difficult. And after an hour, we looked at each other. One is an IPS, one is an honorable minister, and I am in IAS. And we said, if we cannot change it, then who else is government? So I'm sure together, while yes, the system per se is large and difficult to change, with this gathering and with all the minds put together, we surely can bring about large changes, and let us resolve to do it. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for your gracious words and for expressing our collective gratitude. On behalf of the organizing committee, we place on record our sincere appreciation to Sri Sudeep Jain, Member Secretary, National Commission for Women.
With this, may I now request everyone to kindly rise for the national anthem.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you all for your gracious presence and participation. I request everyone to kindly join for lunch.